What you think at 81 years of age is the most dangerous thing that's happening in the country that nobody's talking about?
What I think is most dangerous for our country, and I'm very much afraid that we're going to end up in a civil war because, and I mean a shooting civil war, and I'm not kidding, is because we have been following, the government has been following a policy of division of the people. You're brown, you belong in this category. You're Asian, you belong in that category. You're homosexual, you belong in this category. Everybody's divided instead of pulling together. The President Biden came in saying, I'm going to bring people together. He hasn't.
Frankly, every president says that, and it rarely works.
Not with as much demonstration that I wasn't sincere when they go into office, and the first thing you do is you tear down the barriers for people coming in illegally.
What do you think is the scariest thing that's happening in the country right now that people aren't talking about as much as they should be?
I think it's all the conflicts that we're going through overseas right now, how close we are to World War III, and I think that needs to be talked about.
Who do you blame for that?
Our government.
Our government, even though Putin went into Ukraine and Hamas went into Israel?
Yes, because we should have been able to defend them and stop that, and it didn't happen.
What do you think something that is not getting enough coverage?
All the illegal people, what they're planning to do here. We don't know what all the people coming in are planning.
We're having trouble with medical. The illegals are coming over and they're not bringing doctors. And so we have medical issues and we can't get in because it's being flooded by other people that aren't paying. That nobody talks about that, or the education that we're paying for, and they aren't.
I guess I'm concerned with the possibility of attacks, terrorist attacks on our own soil. It just seems like we're seeing more and more people come across the border that have ties with Iran or with China or places like that.
There's a lot of hate, but also a lot of anxiety wrapped up within the MAGA movement.
What do you think is the most dangerous thing happening in the country that people aren't talking about as much?
I think it's our basic trust of each other. We always looked at us as fellow citizens, and now we're divided, and we all look at, like a guy comes by driving just now and honking, and I put my thumb up, and then I go, oh, and then he goes by, and I go, oh, I could have got shot. You never know anymore. Maybe you aren't want to stand out in the crowd.
What do you think is the scariest thing happening in the country right now, the most dangerous thing happening in the country?
The border, definitely the border, and all of the scams, and it's dangerous. And
to a lot of Americans who don't live in the very heart center of this country, they look at the border and they think, how can people in Iowa be as concerned about the border as they are? What would you say to them?
of how they're concerned about the border?
just because of the geography of Iowa, smack dab in the middle of the country, yeah.
Okay. Well, we're a big state with a small population. So I think they're going to go after California and New York before they come after us because farmers know how to handle themselves. So we'll be ready.
What's the sort of underrated thing that people aren't talking about that you think is sort of scariest now?
The number of kids that go missing, what's happening with these kids that isn't being talked about.
Right.
So
to what do we attribute that? Do we know?
I don't know. They have, it's not talked about enough to really. You have to do some pretty deep digging to figure it out. So.
And when people are scared, sometimes they fall down rabbit holes, like this guy right here.
Alex Jones was right. Change my mind. I'm not here to change your mind. I'm here to. But was he right about Sandy Hook?
Not completely.
The scariest thing happening in the country that people aren't talking about as much as you think they should be talking about now.
Culturally, overall, I think there's just a lot of rot in almost every major institution. Not just within government and elected officials, but you think about the academia, you think about entertainment, business now even. There's a rot within our culture that has got to be reversed in my view.
So actually, I've been to a rally like this before. The footage is on TYT. It was a couple of years ago, just north of Houston, Texas. But oftentimes people who congregate in groups like this, they're just looking for some type of friend group, maybe a social group. They're looking for an outlet, just like anybody else. We all need socialization. We all need friends. We all need to feel like we have a place where we belong. And so oftentimes, unfortunately, that's where a lot of this starts. You know, maybe people have some similar beliefs here and there, especially with the 2016 Trump campaign. So much of it was about speaking to the forgotten man and woman, the forgotten worker in middle America. Obviously, we know it was a big fraud, but that's how a lot of people ended up coming into the Trump circle. And then they found a bunch of friends and they feel at home. So unfortunately, that's oftentimes how things like this go down. But we got to keep on doing what we got to do because we can't let Donald Trump back in office.